I don't apologize, that's my life, but I thought that... But when it was your time, that you would be the one to hold the strings. Senator Corleone, Governor Corleone, something.
I'm not a pezzo 90.
This wasn't enough time, Michael. Wasn't enough time.
New York's finest.
Oh, I love him. Okay. He's the trailblazing filmmaker behind classics like The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, The Outsiders, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, to name just a few of his brilliant movies. Please welcome the legendary Francis Ford Coppola. Okay. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you.
My pleasure.
Before I even ask you about The Godfather, which I want to start with that, but I want to ask you one thing, because I saw a quote. You said, I probably have genius, but no talent. How do you do what you do without talent?
Well, you know, I never felt I had, like, talent, because in my family, talent was really something important, because there was a whole generation of artists and what have you. I always thought I had a good imagination and a lot of enthusiasm, so I never felt I really got the gift of talent.
Like playing the piano or one of those
Well, you know, those
talents.
kids in high school could just draw beautiful pictures.
Right. Yeah.
It was like God-given. I always had to work very hard, but I did have a good imagination. Always have a lot of ideas.
Now, The Godfather, which, has anybody not seen The Godfather in this audience? Just clap if you've never seen it. Okay. Very young people. You've got to rent the movie. It's one of the most brilliant movies ever made, and it's the most American film you'll ever see.
You want to try?
Nothing else like it.
There's nothing else like it. The Sopranos followed The Godfather in terms of, you know, the mob, but it's not the same idea. One is more about what? What's the difference?
Well, you know, I never saw The Sopranos.
No.
I never was interested in mobsters or movies about mobsters, and I spent my career trying to run away from, you know, you get typecast in Hollywood. You have to make gangster pictures, or I made a war film, so then you can only make war films.
But you agree that The Godfather is one of the greatest movies ever made?
No, you know, how can I say that?
I heard that
you
it
know?
shocked. I heard that the success of it actually shocked you. You didn't think that it would be as successful.
It was a very unhappy period of my life because, you know, I was very young, extremely young, and you know, the studio didn't really like my decisions. They didn't like the cast. They didn't like Al Pacino. They didn't want Marlon Brando, and they didn't like the music, and they felt, you know, they really, I was getting fired every week, you know.
Well, speaking of that, that's very interesting, because when it came to casting the movie, you knew right away that you wanted Al Pacino, you wanted James Caan, you wanted Robert Duvall, and the studio didn't want them. What did you say to them that made them go, okay, we'll take them? It
was a very long process. We had taken all of those people, Robert Duvall, and brought them all up to San Francisco where I lived, and, you know, my wife gave Al a haircut, and we shot these screen tests for $1.98 and said, this is the cast, and they absolutely disagreed. They didn't, you know, they didn't know Pacino. Pacino was a stage actor, but you know, and you know, I always thought the head of the studio was Bob Evans, and he's a sort of tall, good-looking guy, you know. And I felt, well, you just want a guy to play Michael who looks like you know. But you know, Pacino was very short.
But handsome, beautiful face.
Well, striking, but not in that same way. That well, he was also a great actor. But basically, we screen tested every young actor and everyone. We spent $500,000 on screen tests, and then finally, in the shuffle of it all happening, I was shocked because I was coming back from visiting Brando for the first time, and I got a message from my secretary. He says, "I talked to your lawyer. Don't quit, let them fire you." And I knew what that meant, that if they fired me, I'd get paid.
Right.
And I had, you know, 2 kids and 1 coming, and I was really broke. And if I quit, I wouldn't get paid. So I said, well, do I have to go and actually suffer that in front of them? Can I just call? And they said, okay, call. And when I called, Evans got on the phone. This is the studio head, Bob Evans, and he says, well, everything's changed. Pacino is going to play the part. Jimmy Caan, whom they wanted to be Michael, is going to be Sonny, and Marlon is, and Duvall was never a controversy.
Brando.
Brando, by that, there's a we don't have time, but the story of how Brando got the part's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But so I was shocked, you know, that suddenly I had gotten this cast, and said, what happened? And apparently they had seen some early scenes from a film Al made called Panic in Needle Park, which he was very, very good in, and that sold him on it.
Ah, I see.
Now, so let's go to my daughter called Apocalypse Now. She used to call it Apocalypse Now when she was little.
My daughter called it a cockroach now. and Sophia, she called it a cockroach now. No, that was Apocalypse. And I'm a fracas flop cucamonga.
That's you?
See, San Francisco kids, they're out there. What made you make this movie? Because this was another difficult... Apocalypse, not Apocalypse.
There's another... All of these are long stories, but what it had come down to is that was a script by a man named John Lucas, George Lucas, and John Milius had cooked that up.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and ultimately I ended up with the script. George was going off to, I guess, make Star Wars, and Milius was directing Dillinger. And I said, well, gee, if we take this big war film, and we make it like a big successful war film, we'll make a lot of money, and then we can make little personal films.
Right.
So I went off with the idea of doing this as a thing to make a success. And of course what happened is the film just totally, the Vietnamese War was so strange that in trying to make it about Vietnam, the film got stranger and stranger and cost more and more, and before I know it, I was really into it.
Right.
Well, now, you know, you're doing films that you have complete control over. You're writing them, you're directing them, you're paying for them yourself. And Tetro, which we went to see, this is your first original screenplay in 30 years. So what made you decide to do Tetro?
Well, ever since I've been a kid, really, and you know, I came about at that time when there were all these fabulous films coming from Europe, and you know, I always enjoyed entertainment films. I still do. I took my wife last Friday to see Night in the Museum, and I have nothing against entertainment films, but cinema, movies, is such a wonderful, broad thing. There's room for every kind of film, and even films that are sort of like works of art, which those wonderful films were. So my dream was to be never a big shot director. I never expected it. I wanted to just be someone who wrote the story and made more personal films that expressed, you know, how I felt about life. And
well, this is really great because Tetro, it's about two estranged brothers who are writers. It's about a betrayal in the family and secrets involving the dad and the other family members. And we have a clip that we'd like to take a look at about the two brothers when they find out about each other.
It's in black and white, which you're not even allowed.
Yeah, it was in black.
How come you say I'm your friend and not your brother?
Do you speak Spanish?
Enough to understand that.
People around here don't know much about me. Miranda doesn't even know who our father is. I'd like to keep it that way.
I don't care, yeah.
What?
It's going to be kind of hard to have a conversation if I can't ask any questions.
And who wants a conversation? Not me.
You know, Vincent Gallo, the older guy is Vincent Gallo, and it's funny, you know, they used to say that Marlon was hard to work with, and now they say that Vincent is hard to work with. You seem to have them all. Were they hard to work with?
Absolutely not. I mean, Marlon was never hard to work with. I think what it was more that his behavior, I mean, was a little eccentric on the set. Yeah. They say he was like a bad boy, you know, and did what he wanted and did what he felt. But as an actor, he was never hard to work with. At least I didn't find it. Vincent, again, when I cast him for this older brother, who's sort of a mysterious character, everyone called me and said, this guy is poison. Do not work with him. Do not involve him. So then I cast him, and he turned out he was a fabulous guy and bright.
The movie is is great, terrific. I love it.
Tetro opens June 11th in New York and Los Angeles, and then nationwide June 19th. We'll be right back. Marlon was a doll, wasn't he?